Welcome to another episode of Boomer Comics Reviews, where we review the best of the Baby Boomers comics of the 1980s. Wait a second, I guess this is actually the first time we're doing this.
Right, yeah.
But we got a great Boomer comic today. I was telling you all about this.
Right.
You hadn't heard about this.
No, and as the only Boomer here right now, I'm shocked that I hadn't heard of it.
I'm a little bit shocked too. I mean, it had its moment in the sun in the early 90s when dinosaurs roamed the earth. No, when dinosaurs roamed popular culture, taking no prisoners. I mean, 93 was a big year for dinos in media. We had Jurassic Park. Mm-hmm. We had your favorite family sitcom,
Not the Mama.
Dinosaurs on ABC, which actually started in 91 and ran to 94.
Right.
And then in the fall of 93 on CBS Saturday mornings, we had a little show called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. And again,
Who knew?
You knew nothing about this.
No, and honestly, during that time, I had nothing better to do than watch TV.
Yeah, what's funny is that I was basically the target demo for this. Like, I was a 9 or 10-year-old boy at the time, and there was nothing really competing for this for my attention, because on Saturday mornings, I looked up the time schedule again, because I thought, well, if I wasn't watching this, I must have been watching something else. But X-Men was on like at 10, and then this was on at 10:30, so it would have been free. But you know what it was up against?
What?
It was up against Power Rangers.
Oh, there's no way. Papa. That's what the Power Rangers did to this. They were like, no way, you're out of here.
I honestly think so. Like, I think if there's like one element that caused Cadillacs and Dinosaurs to not get picked up for a second season, not to take off the way they wanted it to, because there were toys, there were candy bars, there was an arcade game, there was a Sega CD game. They had the full multimedia frontal assault for this show, for this property. But Power Rangers was unstoppable. And if you're going up against them, like, that's what most of the kids are turning into. And I think, again, as a 9 or 10-year-old, I was maybe a little too old at the time for Power Rangers. But my little brother was super into it. So let's just say, I don't remember, but let's just say I was being a good big brother and letting him watch the show he wanted to watch at 10:30.
Uh-huh.
But we're actually more than that. We're not talking so much about the multimedia property, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. I'm more interested today in talking about its source material, which again, like I hinted, is kind of a boomer comic by certified baby boomer Mark Schultz.
Okay, so let me just be honest with you. When you showed me this drawing that you're making, I thought maybe you were showing me a Jurassic World or something like that. They announced a newer movie where instead of Chris Pratt, they were going to use like an older guy, like maybe that guy that played Clark's dad on Smallville.
Oh, right, the guy from Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, so that's who I thought maybe that you were drawing there.
Right.
And so I was like, what's going on? What are we going to announce today?
I totally get it. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, again, it just speaks to the quality of like dino hunting and dinosaur media is like evergreen. I mean, every once in a while, like, it gets really big. Again, like in the early 90s, it was huge. But not a new Chris Pratt movie, not a new Dukes of Hazzard, Dad from Smallville movie. This is me doing my version of some Mark Schultz art from his precursor to Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, a black and white comic series from the 80s and early 90s called Xenozoic Tales. And this is one of those sort of post-apocalyptic, like, modern society has fallen apart and now dinosaurs roam the earth again. But they're still Cadillacs. Like, that's the hero we see here in the middle is a character called Jack Tinrek. And he is...
Jack Tinrek, proud owner of this here Cadillac.
Yeah, exactly. But he's like, he's a part-time shaman, part-time auto mechanic, full-time hothead.
Wow.
And his partner on the right here, Hannah Dundee, who's a rational thinker and maybe something more. I'm just taking that. That's straight from, like, the frontispiece, the introductory stuff.
We didn't get a good...
It's not going to be a great look, but yeah, I just read this issue, number 11, from 1991, and I told you this. Do you remember, like, he did 14 issues of this series. Do you know how many years it took to do about 14 issues?
I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was like 10?
Yeah, it was about a decade, which, they talk about. I was reading, again, issue 11 today from 91. He started the series in, like, February of 87. So yeah, the 14th issue they did came out in 1996, and Mark Schultz has been saying in different places and different interviews for decades now that the story's not over. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of those series that ends on a cliffhanger. So they've collected it a bunch of times since then. There's a bunch of ways to buy these comics. But unfortunately, like, the collection ends in the middle of the story. And they've been saying, Schultz has been saying for decades, like, I'm going to finish it up. But even at the time, like, in the letters page, people were writing in and being like, look, I love the series, but it's been a year since the last issue. Where is it? Now, from your point of view, like, as a fan, like, how patient can you be with an artist that you love before you just give up?
Well, I guess that depends on my age. You know, if it's taking a 10th of my lifespan to get this comic, I'm going to be pretty upset. Yeah. But, I mean, if you're a grown adult, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, that's the rough thing with comics, especially, like, back in the 80s and in the early 90s, where the assumption still was that most of the audience was young boys.
Right.
Like, if you're not there for a year, it's entirely possible your audience has aged out of interest in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I admire Mark Schultz for sticking to his guns and, you know, wanting to put out the best quality product he can. And, like, I was showing you some art from this issue yesterday, and I was like, it just makes me angry how good he is. He's like one of those artists where, you know, I'm using a pen, ink pen and a nib here, but he's using, I'm almost 100% sure, a brush to ink, which is like, oh my God, just so demanding, and like, if you screw up, it's over.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. But he, you know, would take up to a year to put out a new issue. So I admire that, you know, he stuck to his guns, he put out quality work. I also admire that, well, we've heard Todd McFarlane talk about this a couple times, where you remember what he says about how popular you have to be to, like, have a success as a comic. Mm-hmm. You really only have to be, like, in the top 500, because, like, the 499 ahead of that are all, like, they've all been scooped up. Like, Hollywood already has the option. Like, Disney already owns Spider-Man, the X-Men, Warner's owns Superman, et cetera, et cetera. But if you've got a new idea, even if it's something as common as, say, like Dinosaurs in the Apocalypse, then you've got a shot to have your own cartoon, cereal, candy bar, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's cool that he did get to that point where he was able to, you know, have all these productions made out of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we watched a little bit of that on YouTube. What do you think of the other media, the video game and the cartoon they made?
It was really interesting. I think the video game would have caught my attention a lot more than the cartoon, especially because I showed you at the time there was already a Hanna-Barbera cartoon that was very similar that I had already been interested in from my early childhood. So I don't think that I would have cared to watch another dinosaur cartoon.
Right.
Especially as a girl, when there were so many other options that were coming out that were super exciting for me. But the video game is something I would have definitely played to have a strong female character that's kicking some butt. Mm-hmm. And it was very much like Street Fighter.
Yeah, so you would have dropped some quarters in that in the arcade.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's funny because I wouldn't go so far as to say, like, this series is generic. But again, Dinosaurs in the Apocalypse, it's going to remind you of some things. So what was that Hanna-Barbera cartoon that it did remind you of? I think it was called Valley of the Lost.
Yes. Or no, Valley of the Dinosaurs.
Valley of the Dinosaurs.
And so,
I was thinking of Land of the Lost.
So
again.
Basically, there was a family that they were on like an expedition, and they got sucked into a whirlpool, and this whirlpool spit them out in this like land that has been forgotten. And it's basically a land full of dinosaurs, and this family befriends like a cave-dwelling family to help keep their family safe and to start like a civilization together. Mm-hmm.
They've got a similar, in Xenozoic Tales, there's a similar sort of plot line. There's like different human camps, but then there's also a not quite, there's like, not caveman, but like some version of humans. Like almost,
prehistoric people?
Yeah, like, but not even quite like a mutant sort of race who can only, it's funny because I haven't read this in the comic yet, I haven't read all of them, but they can communicate only through Scrabble tiles.
What?
So they would just like, they couldn't speak, but they would just like, you know, write out words in Scrabble tiles.
I can't speak, but I can read, and I'm very fluent in the intricacies of language for you.
Right. Also in terms of Mark Schultz's art, he was very heavily inspired by like EC art, like the Tales from the Crypt and the Mad magazines of the early 50s. Mm-hmm. And he, I read, this is just on Wikipedia, it said that he traded in like all his Marvel and DC comics in the early 80s to get EC comics, and then was like using those to learn how to draw.
Oh.
And another thing I find a little admirable about him is that he got 1 gig at Marvel in the early 80s. He did a backup story in like Savage Sword of Conan, number 132 is what I wrote down.
Oh.
He inked that, and that was like his only Marvel work for a long, long time. And then he started doing Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. So again, I'm impressed that he did his own thing and had so much success with it.
Yeah.
And then what's funny is that eventually Marvel came to him and asked to reprint Xenozoic Tales in color.
Ooh.
So they did the first volume of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and it was just like the Xenozoic comics, but now they were in color. So it's like, you're good enough, Marvel, well, at least at the time, I don't know about now, but if you were good enough in the 80s, Marvel would come to you and be like, here's some money, you keep the copyright, we just want to reprint your work and make it look even better.
Wow.
So that's very cool. Also, if you want to know the first appearance of Xenozoic Tales, it was in a Kitchen Sink anthology. That was the publisher, Kitchen Sink Comics. Anthology called Death Rattle, and it shows up in Death Rattle number 8. But that's not cheap now. If you want like a beat up copy of that, it's $30.
Ooh.
If you want like a nice copy, it gets up to 60 or $90. So you gotta really be a fan.
Yeah.
But it's fun. Again, to me, it's funny because as a kid, I wasn't a fan. And I keep harping on this point. I keep beating this drum about like boomer comics. Because it was like, to me, when I was a kid, Cadillacs weren't cool. I think that was the other issue. Like, one hand, I'm letting my brother watch Power Rangers. On the other hand, I'm like, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. It's not for me, old man. If they had called it like Lamborghinis and Dinosaurs.
Oh, yeah.
Or Porsches and Dinosaurs.
Or Corvettes and Dinosaurs.
Well, even that may have been a stretch for me. But the cool, like Nissan Skyline and Dinosaurs, I'd be like, okay, I'm there. But it's like this, again, I'm talking about the boomer connection here.
Yeah.
Like, this is the type of adventure material that now as I get older, I'm more drawn to. Like, I like now the idea of like an Indiana Jones, Doc Savage, going on a jungle adventure, and there's like a will they, won't they relationship with an attractive, adventurous woman too. But like when I was a kid, I was like, more robots, please. Like, less dinosaurs, more robots.
Right.
So that may have been the other thing. Like, speaking as a 10-year-old from the 90s, like that may have been the thing that didn't quite click with the demographic. But they had the talent there. Like, you remember who wrote the cartoon? Like, we just saw this, and like the name was Stephen E. D'Souza, who's also famous for writing Die Hard. And I was like, how did they get this guy to write this cartoon?
Because they got him at the right time.
I guess so. I mean, it would have been easier a year later, too, because after that he did the Street Fighter movie, and that was a mess. Which, again, like, I was in the demo for that, but even at the time I was like, this is a mess. But some other stuff, if you are more interested in learning more about Xenozoic Tales, there's been a couple of collections of it. Like I said, Topps Comics did their own version that wasn't the original, called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, that was loosely based, I think, on the cartoon and video games. And there's a bunch of collections, and there's also a prequel novella that Schultz wrote called, what is it? Storms at Sea, which some people suspect is kind of explaining how we got to like the great catastrophe, the great cataclysm that ends with, the dinosaurs roaming the earth again.
I think this is one that could have been saved kept in the vault a little bit longer. Maybe released, during a more popular dinosaur movie, like what I was hoping you would be announcing.
Well, it's never too late. I mean, they are going to do a Jurassic World 3, so why not draft on that a bit? The next time that comes out, it's time for another collection. And please, Mark, if you're watching this, I know you are. If you're please finish the story. Like, I haven't finished it yet. I haven't finished the first 14 issues, but when I do, I know I'm going to be like, well, I wonder how people felt in 96 when they were like, I bet it's only going to be another year till issue 15.
Yeah.
Flash forward 23 years later, almost a quarter of a century, we're practically in the Xenozoic era at this point. Just kidding. But that's all we have to say about Xenozoic Tales, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. A great sort of hidden gem in terms of comics. And if you like it, I'll put some links below for options for how to get some back issues or the collected editions. And until next time, honey, what do we tell people?
If you like this video, let us know why you like it in the comments below. And click that like button or smash that like button, however you do. And be sure to let your friends know.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe, smash the bell for notifications, smash the like button, and all the artists out there. If you're an artist yourself, look, none of us may ever become as good as Mark Schultz. This guy is a legend. But if you want to get better, you got to keep drawing. So keep drawing, draw every day, and until then, we'll see you next time.